You're listening to Investify, preaching financial independence and assisting investors to achieve a more flexible and free lifestyle through smart financial planning and real estate investing. If leaving the corporate world and jumping into this thriving industry is what you desire, tune in and listen to stories of like-minded individuals who made the leap to financial independence. Equip yourself with the right tips and tricks to start your real estate journey, making active or passive ventures that are highly profitable and rewarding.
What's going on, everybody? You are listening to Investify. My name is Craig Curlop, aka the Fi Guy, and I'm here with my co-host, Miss Ellie Garcet. What's up, Ellie?
What's up, Craig? How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Good. I'm here in my kitchen still.
Here in the kitchen. It's you. You can. Did I ever make this joke about taking the heat? You can. I said you can take the heat, so you can stay in the kitchen. I think I did. I probably made that joke.
I love it. I love hearing it again, so thank you.
Yeah. I've got like a repertoire of like 5 jokes, and they're funny for the first time you hear them, but if you hear them again, it's less funny. And if you're my wife, you hate all of them. So, um, you know how that goes.
You're ready to be a dad, Craig. That's what I hear.
Yeah, maybe that's just what it is. Speaking of dads, I actually don't know if Elijah has any kids, but he seems to be the daddy of real estate investing for this episode at least, because he went from one little small $140,000 home in Orlando to now buying big multifamily units all around the country in just a few years, right? Just 5 or 6 years. And I think you guys, if you're just listening to this starting out, you can really see the progression. And I think he's super relatable. Like, this is something that any one of you listening can do. And if that's the path you want to take, if you want to get into the multifamily space, he paints a pretty clear picture of what you need to do. And so definitely listen through all the way to the end. If you love this episode, please leave us a rating and review on iTunes. It's super, super helpful for us. And give us a follow on Instagram. Let us know you're listening. It always makes us feel good to know that there's someone out there hearing what we're saying. So, with that being said, let's bring on Mr. Elijah Brown. This episode of Investify was brought to you by the FI team, a team of investor-friendly agents that service all 50 states. If you are looking to house hack, to invest, grow your portfolio, and want a true investor-friendly agent on your side, go to thefiteam.com and click Get Started, and we can't wait to have a good conversation with you. Elijah Brown, welcome to the show, my friend. How you doing today, dude?
Hey, thanks so much for having me on. I'm great. I've been looking forward to this for weeks now, so I'm very excited. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man, we're super excited to have you on. So why don't you let's kick it off from the beginning, man. When did you first hear about financial independence?
Oh man, a long time ago. I think I was 12 years old, and I had you're familiar with Rich Dad Poor Dad. I had a rich dad, is my best friend's dad, who he was like the money man, like Mr. Krabs, like money, 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 and he made me read Rich Dad Poor Dad essentially. And so from a very young age, I was like hyper obsessed and focused on like trying to make money and become free and get out of the rat race and all those great things. But I didn't know that the path to doing that at the time was real estate. And so I actually thought I was going to become an investment banker. And so I went through the whole recruitment pipeline and college. I selected my schools based on the best feeders for like Goldman Sachs, and ended up so I went through all those recruitments and ended up getting a job at a hedge fund. So that was really lucky, because that was like, oh my goodness, I can skip all of this banking stuff where I'm gonna give away 100 hours a week for years of my life, and instead I'll just go start trading stocks right away and make $500,000 a year right out of college. Well, that internship, it wasn't exactly my cup of tea. I realized pretty quickly that I wasn't really interested in the hedge fund space or the public markets, and so I knew that I needed to do something else. Around the same time, I was a sophomore in college. I started watching a lot of YouTube videos, and I fell down some rabbit holes like Chris Crone, Bigger Pockets, Phil Pustajovsky, Graham Stephan, and a few others. And I got really intrigued by this concept of owning rental properties. And I did a lot of research. And then after a few weeks, I decided it was time to take action. So I made the decision to go and buy a single family house and put a tenant in it. But I had a huge problem. That was I didn't have cash. I didn't have credit. I didn't know what to do. And so I actually started syndicating from day one. And what syndication is, for those listening, is when you pool money together from multiple people to go and buy something. So I called my best friend and my cousin, and we went out and we bought that first property together. And it was a complete dumpster fire, but we got it done. And I'm so glad we did, because here I am 1,000 units later, with financial independence. So that's the beginning of the story. And
Yeah, man, that's a great little recap. So, like, I guess what year did this all happen? Like, so I mean, you started off at 12, interested, and then skip a few years, and you're in college being an investment banker. And so, like, yeah, give us a little bit of a timeline here.
yeah, around 2016, 2017 is when we closed on that first house. So, a little while ago. And actually, funny story with that. So we actually hired a firm that kind of walks you through the process of buying your first rental. It's kind of like a turnkey, buy your first property type of thing, where you pay them $4,000 and then they help you buy your first property. Horrible. Don't recommend it. Although it was great for us because it got us started. What was funny was that we had been looking for a property with this firm for a while. We analyzed maybe 4 or 5 properties that didn't end up working, and the one that did work, we got it under contract, and we got it under contract like 2 weeks before I had to report for my like basic training for the military. And so I had to like quickly sign over my power of attorney to my cousin and just hope that it went well, because we were, in the field without our cell phones, like literally camping. And had I gotten caught with a cell phone trying to like work, I would have been kicked out. And so, thankfully, my cousin was able to close escrow on the property, and it all worked out from there.
Wow. So when you say it was a dumpster fire, is that why? Because you had no idea really what was going on because you were out in the field?
Oh man, there was a lot of different reasons that firm that we hired to help us. I realize it now, but their underwriting, like their calculator to calculate if the deal actually works, was very flawed. It was like not conservative at all. It was essentially just like, let's show them whatever numbers they need so that they buy the property and we get our $4,000. And so we started off kind of in like a bad financial position, where we had to make officer loans for like the first few years just to pay the mortgage sometimes. So that was part of the dumpster fire. The other part was obviously the closing process. At one point, I checked my phone late at night in a porta potty, and it was like 3 days ago. My cousin had been like blowing up my phone, trying to get in touch with me because he had to log into my Bank of America account to figure out how to like do something for the escrow agent. I don't remember exactly what it was. And somehow he worked with my dad and figured out how to break into my bank account and closed on the property. So that was and it's funny because every single deal I've done since then has also had like significant like hurdles and roadblocks to overcome. Not one deal I've done has been like easy. So it was kind of just like they've all been like extremely difficult and had some type of thing pop up that almost caused it to fail.
Yeah, so I guess like let's get a little bit into this first deal. Allie, you know what time it is?
It's time
It's
for
time
the
for
The
for
for
real
real deal.
deal.
real deal.
All right. This is the first deal you ever done, Elijah. So we want kind of all the details. You mentioned that I guess let's start almost like just before the first deal, because you mentioned that you didn't house hack your first deal, right? You kind of like went from newbie to expert in that you just started with a syndication. And so why didn't you house hack? I know in 2017 house hacking was a thing. Tell us your mindset there.
Yeah, it's a great question. I was living in Los Angeles, going to school at the University of Southern California, and there was no way that I would be able to afford or house hack or do anything with a $1 million property where I was living. And so my really only option was to go out of state. And so we settled on buying in Orlando, Florida, because we thought that area had the best potential for appreciation. And the house was only $140,000. So we were able to come up with, the 40,000, 50,000 in cash that we needed to actually close on it.
Was this a house that was owned by that company?
No, it wasn't. But the company made the referral to the agent, and the company made the referral to the property manager, and essentially, held our hand through the process of finding the property, which was on the MLS.
Right. So you bought this thing for 140,000. What did it look like? Was it like three bed, two bath, or?
Yeah, it was just like your entry level 3 bed, 2 bath, 1,400 square feet. We rented it out for $1,250 a month, and we probably put like $5,000 or $6,000 into some real basic things like just cleaning it up, maybe some paint.
Okay. And then what? And so was there like what was the ARV after you did some of that cosmetic stuff?
So I think from day one, we pretty much stepped into $20,000 or $30,000 worth of equity. So we bought it for 140. It was probably worth about 160 or 170 at that point. And we obviously started investing in a very hot market. Over the past 6-7 years, property values have appreciated significantly, especially in the Orlando market. So, we had 4 single family homes and a sixplex in that area, and we were able to sell all of those over the past few years and recycle that capital into much larger deals.
I didn't realize that Orlando had that they were so close to the 1%. That's crazy. At that time, and I'm sure now that it's not. I'm sure now it's like maybe like 0.5.
I've been talking to my girlfriend about this too. It's like it's not a normal thing that like properties don't like cash flow. That's like a very like recent thing. You like 15, 20 years ago, you could probably literally buy any property and put a tenant in, and you'd probably be able to pay the mortgage and maybe have a little left over. You know, Rents have not kept up with price increases, and so we're in a situation now where most properties across the country, their 1 month of rent is maybe 0.5% of the value of the property, rather than hitting that 1% rule. It's almost impossible to find the 1% rule these days.
Yeah, and it's funny because back in 2017, like when I first started, I remember everyone was talking about the 2% rule, right? That was the big rule. And so 1% wasn't good, right? But now I totally agree that kind of depending on your market and depending on where you're at, those are all just rules of thumb, right? You really shouldn't even, and these days they're pretty antiquated. Like you're not going to see that. And I think that trend is just going to continue. If you look at some other countries and that maybe are a little bit more advanced in terms of real estate, like London and Japan and all that. Like most people don't own homes there. That's not part of their culture. They rent apartments, and there's a few rich people who own those apartments that are raking it in. And so, if in 30 years we're going to be like Japan and like London, it would be nice to be one of those people that own the things that everyone else needs to rent. And so, I think that's kind of where my head's at, where it's like you want to buy and hold for that long term.
Yeah, and you're hinting at a much larger issue, which is essentially like the middle class going away. And so we're heading toward a situation where you're going to have like the top 0.01%, owning like almost everything, and then everyone else is just poor and renting, and it's whether we like it or not, it's a horrible situation, and that's what's happening. And you need to decide now which side of it you want to be on. Whether it's good or not, it's just a bad situation, and you need to make a decision.
Yeah, and I think back 30, 40 years ago, you really didn't have that decision to make. Like if your parents were rich, then you probably would end up rich, and if not, then you kind of were dealt your hand. But these days, there's so much information and so many influencers and education and just telling you and teaching you how to be one of the wealthier people, how to be in the middle, upper, at least upper middle class or upper class, that it's really hard. And maybe this is me just not being empathetic, and that's something I need to work on. But it's really hard for me to empathize with people that are just like okay being average and you're just going to basically drift off into being poor because everybody else is getting ahead, right? And so like what do you like do I feel bad that the middle class is going away? I think everyone in the middle class has an opportunity to get in the upper class and they're just not taking it.
They do, and that opportunity will not be here forever. It's sad because people who are just graduating college now, unless their parents are going to help them significantly, they might not be able to buy a house until they're 40 or 50 years old. Whereas we were able to buy a house, right out of school, and it's sad, but it is the reality. It's where things are trending.
So then to recap this first deal, you're the one that found it, and the house was on the MLS. You used a company to help guide you, and I use guide, loosely because you said that their calculator was showing you what you wanted to see, and that it was $4,000, but also it got you started. Like $4,000, yes, it's steep. There are so many other companies that will take way more of that, way more money. And like one time I had somebody reach out to me and say, like, I just spent $20,000 on a company to help me get started. Do you think it was worth it? And I was like, it all depends on you. If you end up making that deal and then therefore because of that deal you're able to do more, you'll recoup that. Yeah, that's steep, but you will recoup it. So it just depends on you. So the $4,000, it hurts, but it got you started. And so when you were still like out in the field when you were placing a tenant, like who was in charge of, I want to talk about like property management there. Who was in charge of what?
It was the real estate agent that we were connected with. Her husband was the property manager. What a surprise! And so as soon as we closed escrow, they were working together to already get the place ready and find a tenant. The problem was that this property was too far away from Disney to attract the Disney employees, too far away from downtown Orlando to attract any of like the corporate people. It's kind of in the sticks. If you've heard of the market like Point Siena or Kissimmee, it was pretty much in the woods, and so it took a little longer to find tenants. And those vacancy issues over the years really contributed to a reduction in our cash flow, required us to make officer loans to essentially float the mortgage, and it just was ultimately the reason why we ended up selling the asset.
What's an officer loan? You mentioned that twice.
Yeah, it's essentially when the owner of the property has to transfer their personal funds or lend money from their personal account to the business account or to the whatever bank account you're using to operate the rental property, to essentially keep the business alive, to make the mortgage payment every month. And we would record those and we'd charge interest to ourselves. And essentially, it was a way. You could either do an equity contribution, which would then rearrange who owns what percentage owns what, or you could just do a loan, which is a much cleaner way to do it.
Hmm. See, it's funny. I never heard of it. I never heard of anybody doing. I'm sure people do it that way. I've just never heard of anybody like putting money in and then giving themselves interest back. I think that's a really good idea, especially if you're working with a partner to just keep things fair.
We treated it like a business from day one. We set up an LLC. We had an operating agreement. When you have partners involved, you have to do it that way. If it's just you, you can kind of do it on your own. I would still recommend setting up an LLC and treating it like a business. But if you have partners, you absolutely need to do that just to protect everybody's interest, and the liability needs to be taken care of as well.
Is there anything else from that property that you want to mention before moving on to where you're at now and, the journey in between?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is important. Going back to your whole $4,000 thing being worth it, and maybe 20,000 being worth it. Had we lost money on that property, and by the way, we should have lost money. We should have lost a lot of money. We got lucky because the market went up. Had we lost money, it would have still been worth it, because now I've made like 1,000 times that on other deals, and I wouldn't have done those other deals if I hadn't gotten started with that first property.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think a lot of people think they want to like try to get super rich off one property, but man, that first property is your tuition, right? Like you're learning, you'll probably lose money. Even if you make money, that's just consider that luck, and then you can scale that up into the next few. And so let's get into kind of like the next how you scaled. And so you took this property, you sold it. How much did you end up netting from that property after realtor fees, after all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, after like everything, considering like the money in and the money out and the rental income and everything, we only made like $30,000. It was not a very profitable deal. Like I said, we should have lost money, did a lot of things wrong, including buying the property in the first place. It was just a bad, the numbers didn't really make sense. But we made about $30,000.
Okay, nice. And so what did you do with that $30,000 next? What was your next move?
Yeah, so that was actually, we held that property for over 3 years. And so, when we sold that, we took that money and I ended up reinvesting it in other deals that I had going on. But I think we should probably take a step back to, properties, number 2 through 10, because, that was next in the sequence of it. So after we bought that first one, we realized that like, even if the cash flow wasn't great, we had essentially added, $30,000 or whatever to our net worth just by buying it. Like we stepped into an equity position, and that was really awesome to us. And we wanted to do that again. We were like, if we could just like buy stuff, our net worths will go way up. And so we did that 3 more times. I ended up, I was actually in a car accident while I was at school, and I sued for workers' comp with like, because I was driving the school drunk taxi cab, and so I ended up like suing the employer for workers' comp, and got a fat check from that, and ended up buying a second property. I then got a job. I graduated from school, ended up finding a job at a real estate fund where I learned a lot. And I convinced some of my coworkers to jump in with me on a few more of those single families, and then ultimately our first multifamily, which was a sixplex.
And are you staying in Orlando this whole time, or have you jumped around in different cities?
Yep. Still in Orlando, along the I-4 corridor, a few different towns within Orlando MSA.
Awesome. And so for like the second house, like what did you learn from the first house that you then were able to apply on the second house that you did or did not do?
Location and underwriting. So location, the first house was like in the sticks. It was hard to find tenants. We learned we picked a much better location in an up and coming urban area with enough jobs to support tenants, and and that really paid off. We made a lot more money on that property, but then also underwriting. So we did our own financial modeling on this one rather than using the company that we had used before, and it was a lot more conservative. And we went through maybe like 20 or 30 properties before we landed on that one, the one that actually worked, just because we kept saying, no, the numbers don't work on this one, that they don't work on this one. And then we ultimately found one that worked for us.
So how was your relationship too, like with your real estate agent at the time? Going through 20 properties, probably putting in offers, lowballing, like stuff like that. Like, how do you find a good realtor that's like down to do that, can do it with like a smile on their face, and isn't like you're just like, you're wasting my time.
There are millions of agents out there. They're a dime a dozen. Like they call me all day long, and the ones who actually get the sales and get the transactions are the ones who are willing to deal with the clients who are going to go through like 20 or 30 keys before they make a decision. I think it's just part of the job. You know this because you guys are in the business. But we found one. I founded this guy named Chris Sheedy, and he was featured in the Orlando Sentinel, which was like their magazine or whatever, and it was like #1 real estate agent, whatever. I'm like, okay, if he's got enough money to like place an ad in this magazine, like telling us about his awards, and he has enough money to like hire a few agents below him, he's probably done some deals. He's probably good at what he does. And so I hired him, and it turned out that he had worked with a lot of investors before, and he was used to the process and understood what we were looking for. And he was great. We never had heard any complaints. He was always available, and we ended up doing like 10 deals with him. So he made his money's worth on it.
Wow, those ads actually work. I took an ad out one time on one of those things, and I was like, I just totally, just threw away a whole bunch of money.
It's hit or miss. I think what Allie's doing with her TikTok and her Instagram is actually like best thing you could possibly do. I've been following the videos, and it's like really engaging. I'm sure you're, finding a lot of agents and clients from that.
Yeah, yeah, it's paying off, and I get the calls a lot of like, "Hey, do you want to be in a grocery store? The little shopping cart thing or the billboard right outside of a gym." I'm like, "No," because my target audience is actually VA military. So I'm like, grocery stores won't really benefit me." But I think even if I was, doing mainly conventional loans out for like the Gen Pop, I think I would still continue with my social media because it's free, like it's free. So, but I'm also a cheapskate too, so that's me.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Whatever you're doing is great because the content is top notch.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Crushing it. Awesome, Elijah. Okay, so why don't you tell us? So, you did a few of these single family things. It kind of sounds like you were just taking what you learned, applying it, and actually maybe reaping some of the fruits of your labor and of your mistakes. And then you decided it was time to scale up to the 6 unit. And so, why the 6 unit? Like, when did you feel like you were ready to actually make that jump? And if someone's afraid to make that jump, like, what might you say?
Yeah, I had a mentor at work. As I explained, I got a job at a real estate fund out of school, and so it was actually the guy who hired me, Paul, and he sat me down once, and he was like questioning me about the numbers on my single family properties. He's like, "Dude, you're gonna need to buy like 1,000 of these to like get rich." I was like, and then he told me, you need to be in multifamily, and essentially told me that I'll be doing the same amount of work to manage, a 20-unit apartment complex that I would with, a duplex or a single family house. And so really, it's like, why wouldn't I do that? And here are a few other benefits. When you're buying a single family house, the value is based on comps, dollars per square foot of the surrounding properties, and so that's kind of up to like the market sentiment, the hype, what's going on with like, you know Jill and Nancy or Tom, who are excited about getting their first house and will pay whatever for it. That's not really reflective of what the income is worth, as a rental. With multifamily, the property value is completely determined, based on how much income that property is generating. And so when you buy the property, you know what the value is, and when you do renovations and you increase rents, you know what the value is going to be in the future. So it's a lot more predictable, and you can actually force an increase in the value of the property without relying on the general market hype to bring the value up. And that's super important because that reduces risk, and it also increases the ability to make money, because you can take actionable steps to actually increase the value of the property and know that it's going to increase. And so that, I think, is the main reason. Multifamily comes with a lot of economies of scale. If you're renovating a single family house, you might have to spend $150,000 to do it right. But if you could do 100 units at the same time, it might only be 30,000 or $30,000 per unit, because you're ordering all these materials in bulk. Your property management, instead of being a 10% of the gross revenue from a single family house, you're probably paying anywhere 4 to 5% on a multifamily property. So there's a lot of your expenses are a lot lower. Your capex is probably lower per unit, and then you can also determine what the value is going to be, and you can force an increase in value with the multifamily.
Yep. I love that. It's really like when you're buying a multifamily property, you're buying a business, right? I mean, you're buying a stream of income, and that's dictated by whatever that cap rate is. And so, yeah, and the way you increase value there is increase the income, decrease the expenses, right? That's simple as that. Super simple formula.
So then with the sixplex, was this something that you also syndicated money for? And did you use the same partners as before? How did you find new partners if you found new ones?
So this was my first like official legal syndication. Up until this sixplex, I like didn't know what I was doing. I was just like calling like friends and family, and being like, "Hey, like let's all get together, put together an LLC and buy a property together." I had no idea. all of like the Regulation D of the Securities Exchange Commission rules, and the various exemptions you can apply for to be able to raise money legally and sell securities legally. This sixplex was the first one where I actually went out, hired a law firm, put together the necessary documents to be able to sell securities. And the reason why this deal became a security as opposed to the other deals is because at least one of the people who was investing money in the deal was a passive investor. What that means is that they weren't materially participating in the actual operations of the property. They were just writing a check and with an expectation of return. That's what selling a security is. And in the past, my deals were joint ventures where everybody who was investing was like listed on the operating agreement of the LLC, having a job, materially participating, jumping on calls every few months to discuss the financials. Whereas the sixplex was, a passive investment for most people. I played the role of general partner. We also call that sponsor, or like the lead manager of the deal. And in exchange for that role, I got fees for that. So once that deal went full cycle, I took a percentage of the profits as my success fee, essentially for doing all the work.
How did you find that partner that was for the one that was like just passive? How did you get in contact with him?
Great story. So I put the property under contract. I then put together a little presentation, and I walked around my office. Actually, I hit everybody up outside of work hours. Let's just say that. And I was able to get 10 people, friends, family, and coworkers, to each put up, between $5,000 and $20,000 to get this deal done. And I was only raising like $112,000, and it was like the most difficult thing ever. It's funny now because now I'll like raise millions in a week, but then it was like extremely difficult. We had people backing out at the last second. I had to beg the seller of the property to meet me at the Ritz-Carlton Laguna Niguel in California because he was out there, and like I couldn't close on the property, and I begged him to seller finance me like the remaining $20,000 that I needed, and he agreed to do it for like a year, and we were able to get the deal done that way. But it wasn't just one passive investor; there were 10 people on that deal, and so I really needed the legal documents in place to be able to do that.
So your buddy that told you that a six family or a multifamily wouldn't be as much work as a single family. I'm not crazy here, but it sounds like the multifamily might have been more work dealing with investors and raising money and such small amounts of money at like would you agree with what he said, or do you know what he meant?
Yeah, and I disagree with where you're going with that because, had I bought 6 separate single family homes, I would have had to deal with 6, closing processes, which would have been horrible. I would have had to deal with, renovations on 6 different addresses, different property management contracts. It would have just been a lot more work, like way more work.
Okay. Yep. I just want to make sure that was totally clear because I do agree. There's certainly economies of scale in the multifamily space.
And now I'm like investing in like 300 unit apartment buildings, and I'm doing the least amount of work I've ever done.
I feel like we could go into your story and probably be on here for a couple of hours to really get in, right? But from the overview perspective, we start from single families. Now you're in like this kind of like medium, smallish multifamily range. And then was it after the 6 unit that you were like, oh, if I can do 6, I can do 300? Or was there kind of more of a staircase to it?
There's a bit more of a staircase. I bought a few of the smaller multifamilies, over those years. Eventually, doing my like first partnership, we call this co-GP, essentially where you become like one of the managers in a much larger company's deal. And essentially, I joined their deal, brought a bunch of capital, did some underwriting, did some asset management services in exchange for being a manager in that deal. That allowed us to get our first, 50 plus units. And we did that in Colorado. We then put a portfolio together in Vermont with the same partner. And so those partnerships, why that was important is because up until then I had been doing all of the work myself, like finding the property, negotiating with the bank, finding the equity investors, hiring the property manager, literally doing everything. And it was like burnout city. So why this was important is because it allowed me to focus on what I was good at and doing a smaller portion of, the work, bringing value that I had, and then outsourcing the rest to the other partner. And so that's what really allowed me to start adding significant numbers of units to my portfolio, to the point now where I'm only playing, an investor relations role right now. And, I'm adding hundreds of units a month to my portfolio, but I'm not doing any of the operations work. And so really hyper like focusing on what you're good at, and the value that you bring, and then outsourcing everything else is like super important for scaling.
We hope this episode is inspiring you to take action. If you're thinking about becoming a real estate agent, or an agent who wants to join an investor-friendly team, just hit me up on Instagram at the Fi Guy, because we are growing our team in Denver, Seattle, San Diego, and Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, but also adding to our network in all 50 states. And if you didn't already know this, the Fi team provides a super supportive environment with one-on-one coaching, accountability, and ongoing training to help develop kick-ass, rock star, investor-friendly real estate agents. So hit me up on Instagram at the Fi Guy, shoot me a DM, and we'll set up a time to chat. Can't wait to chat with you. This is, I think this is so cool. Just kind of like, I felt like you started, right? You were kind of doing everything. You had like a very wide gamut of jobs. And then at each like kind of inflection of your journey, you get more and more specified. Like you become more and more of a specialist. And now you're an extreme specialist of what it seems like investor relations, raising capital. That's your strength. You're doubling, tripling, quadrupling down on that, while maybe only taking 25 or maybe even less than that percent of the pie, where way less, right? Where, now you're bringing in a bunch of other people, but that's how you grow, right? Like Jeff Bezos is like one of the richest men in the world. He owns 16% of Amazon, right? If he owned 100% of that, you would never have heard of him. And it's because of everyone doing things that are actually what they're good at that makes that makes the whole pie bigger.
2 years ago, I found a business partner, and I agreed to split the business 50-50 with this guy, because he was going to be doing a significant amount of the work that I didn't want to do. I wanted to focus on what I was good at, and trying to do lead generation and growing our platform, and growing the business. And I needed someone to take investor calls, do like asset management related tasks and stuff like that, and he was willing to do that. So I outsourced within my company, and then, our company is just, focusing on one specific role now. And we're essentially outsourcing all of the operations, like all of the deal, to, someone who's way more experienced, someone who's already got billions of dollars under management. And that's just, a way, it's a less riskier strategy, and it allows us to scale way faster.
How do you go about finding these people?
Okay, so the progression of capital raising starts with friends and family. So when you don't have a track record, and you don't have any experience or skills, the only people who are going to give you money are people who will trust you when you've got nothing, and that's friends and family. So you start there. You make a list of everyone you know, and you tell them what you're doing. You have conversations with them, and you try to get someone like my best friend and my cousin, who each wrote, $15,000 checks back a while ago. You try to get people like that to believe in your dream in the beginning, and you use those early properties, those early deals, to build your track record. I'm going on my 17th deal at this point, and it's, I've got 10 full cycle deals. They were small deals, but I've got all those full cycle deals that I can now rely on to raise capital from actual investors. And so once you've exhausted your friends and family network, and coworkers, by the way, so anyone who's got a close relationship with you, friends, family, coworkers, once that money has been exhausted, you need to start going after what we call retail investors. These are also referred to as, high net worth or ultra high net worth, or high earners, people who can stroke a $25, $50, $100,000 check for your deals. And to do that, you really need to get on social media and do some type of thought leadership. So for me, I'm on LinkedIn posting 3 or 4 times a week. I'm going on podcasts like this one, telling people my story and my strategy, and trying to connect with new people who might be interested in investing in my deals.
I love that. And then how about finding how do you find the operations person? How do you concentrate on what you're good at and find the other guys?
That's easy, because people are scared right now. it's hard to raise capital. And so these people who have deals are coming to us, the capital raisers, and saying, we need you to raise money for us. And so, I've got 4 or 5 like trusted sponsors that I'm interested in raising capital for. And, I've done a lot of due diligence on these people. I analyzed their financial models. I've met them multiple times in person, and I've come to trust them over the years.
Awesome. It just sounds like anything, right? Like you're getting out there doing the thing, and when you do the thing, you meet other people doing the thing, and then you can partner up. That's how
That's
almost.
exactly right. It's not like, yeah, you're not just going to find these companies. You got to either like go on LinkedIn, start posting and learning about, these things. You got to go to conferences. Like Allie and I met at the real estate wealth builders conference, and there were like maybe 10 or 15 sponsors there who had deals to sell. And so that's where you can meet people, word of mouth, investing in deals, just being in the industry and playing a part. You meet all of these people.
Yep, yep. That's so amazing.
Well, I wanted to ask what's next for you? Like what is your year out goal, and then what's like your final goal?
Sure. So we had a number of deals go full cycle. We were averaging between 30 and 100% IRRs. So we did well in the bull market, and I decided to make a lifestyle change. I had this dream of building out a Mercedes Sprinter van and traveling the world. And my girlfriend and I bought the van, and we spent 2 years converting it into what is now our home. And right now we're in Colorado, but we just spent a couple months in Baja, Mexico, and we're essentially just traveling around and having a great time. But with that, our my business had to pivot from actively operating and managing deals to doing a role that I could do from anywhere and not be boots on the ground. And for me, that's it's passively investing and then also capital raising for these opportunities. And so that's where my business is. We call that more of a fund of funds model, where I'm raising money outside of the deal and then writing a check to the deal. And that's kind of the model that my business is moving in right now. And we're looking to scale that by doing, a deal every single month. And that's how we'll grow our revenue.
Nice. Are you in the van right now? Is that
No, so we got a membership at a co-working space. So right now we're near Telluride, and we pay for co-working space. It's one of the downsides of traveling with your significant other in a very small space, and both owning your own businesses is that you kind of like interrupt each other's phone calls, and it's hard to schedule things, and it's like you're in each other's like heads sound space all day long. And so one of our solutions is to just go to different areas to work. But when we're traveling, I'll go outside, or she'll go to the other side of the van, and we'll just figure it out. We'll sync our calendars and make it work.
Yeah, we did the van life for like a very short period of time, but I think we couldn't deal with all of the like thinking about all the little things that you don't usually have to think about, like where to park the car every night and like where to work and all that. Yeah, but I think that it's fun though. If you can be in beautiful places, man, it is worth it.
Totally.
I'll have to pick both of your brains about this because Britt is looks like she might be medically retiring or separating soon, like in the next couple of months, unexpectedly. So even though we bought this massive house right now, we're like, hey, what if we were to buy like completely, downsize and just buy an RV and just travel the world, the US. And I'm like, hey, let's do it.
Yes, do it. Do it right now. You guys have like no responsibilities.
Yeah, we only have two cats, which would be very annoying.
We have a cat in our van, and it's great. We love it. You guys could even do a school bus if you wanted to. We were thinking about a school bus once upon a time.
Oh wow, yeah, I'll have to hit both of you up because I never even thought about where to park.
And they're like super luxurious. Like it's like can be as luxurious as you want it to be. Like our van is like really nice. It looks like a farmhouse, like really nice, like white shiplap walls and like LVP floors and like a massive sink. Like it's nice. You can do it however you want. So yeah.
But dude, I feel like one fart would just like ruin the whole. You'd have to like air it out.
No, it does. It's not that bad. Sometimes we burn incense, but like we've got like a big like fan in the roof, and we open the windows and circulate the air, so it's not bad.
All right, cool. I'm convinced.
You guys should do it. I'm not doing that. Definitely not. But come to our place. We're up in Coeur d'Alene. We'd be happy to host you. You can park in our driveway. That would be fun. So cool, Elijah. All right, so let's kind of like give us a kind of a recap of your portfolio today, right? Because you started this whole thing in 2017. You built kind of an empire that's still growing. And so like where you mentioned 1,000 units. What does that look like in passive income? Give us if you don't mind sharing some of that info.
Yeah, sure. No, the 1,000 units is a combination of like actively managed deals and also deals that I've passively invested in. The majority of our units are in Phoenix, Arizona, and now we're branching off into Dallas, Texas as well. But I've got a fairly large portfolio in the state of Vermont, where I'm from, so it's more of like a higher cash flow tertiary market type of thing. I've got a property in Colorado, in Denver, Colorado, and then I passively invested in some deals in Georgia as well. So Augusta, I've got a large property there. Atlanta, I've got a property there, and then I've done a bunch of passive investing in the Arizona and Dallas markets as well. So that's what it looks like in terms of the active portfolio. The active portfolio is the Vermont, the Colorado, the Phoenix, Arizona, locations, and I am in the process of essentially taking those deals full cycle so that I can be almost exclusively passive. I want my active work to be raising capital, not hiring contractors to renovate units.
Totally. Love that, man. Man, I love to hear your story. Love to see how much you've grown, and it just feels so like it feels like you just like know when to take the next step, and you like take the next step, and then next we'll be seeing you sitting next to Grant Cardone in a couple of years if you keep on this track. So
I'm going to need this market to start going on a bull tear again for that to happen.
yeah, well, hey, just hold it. We'll just wait. It will happen.
That's right. Just buy it and wait.
Buy and wait. Awesome. Well, hey, I think it's time for us to get into the final part of our show. But before we do you have any other parting words of wisdom for the listeners?
You need to take action. Everyone shows up at these like real estate events, like these meetup events, and they come for years and years, and they've read all the books, they've watched all the videos, they've listened to every single one of your podcasts, and they still haven't bought their first property. I watched YouTube videos for 2 weeks before deciding to jump in, and then I learned like 1,000 times more from actually doing a deal than I ever did from watching videos or reading books. So definitely just got to get started. I'd also recommend not trying to do everything yourself from the beginning, like I did. That was risky, and that might not work in a down market. Start off with like partnering with someone who's already doing it, or a larger firm that's already going out and doing deals. Just provide some type of value to them, or work for them as an employee before you go off and do it yourself.
I think that's so important, man. Like, I think a lot of people, even myself too, it's like it's really nice to own 100% of the deal and be the only one in it and have the only control, but it's just not the way to scale. You got to use other people's time, other people's money in order to scale up to 1,000 units in 5 or 6 years. So
Absolutely. You think Brandon Turner got to 7,000 units by doing everything himself? The I don't know how many hours a week the guy works, but his team is literally doing everything. And to the point where it's like, I'm pretty sure half of his deals are just fund to fund deals or co-GP deals where he's just helping put his face on the marketing materials to raise the capital for someone else's deal. And so it's that's like the ultimate like doing what you're good at and using what you're good at, and then outsourcing literally everything else to scale the portfolio.
yeah, absolutely. Yep, I think Brandon's a good role model for anyone looking to scale like he has, because it's been fun to watch too. Um, and the funny thing is too is I remember him being kind of afraid to get into his first mobile home park. It took him like 2 years or something to buy his first mobile home park. And so I know everyone looks to Brandon as almost like the poster child of bigger pockets and all that, but and he is right. I never would say anything bad about Brandon, but there is that analysis paralysis for everybody, even people at the top. There's the imposter syndrome. There's all that stuff. You just have to like push through it, and immediately when you push through that, you just start to see your net worth and everything grow.
Absolutely.
All right, Allie, you know what time it is?
It's time for the final
Final
The final four.
All right, Allie, kick us off.
Yeah, question number one. What are you reading right now?
All right, I'm reading two things. The first book is Leadership Strategy and Tactics by Jocko Willink. Awesome book. Highly recommend it. I mean, I come from a military background, so like I can kind of relate a lot to what he's saying, but it's really for anyone who's interested in leadership, entrepreneurship, or getting to the next level. Great book. The other thing I'm reading, which is really funny because I'm actually Jewish, I'm reading the New Testament, the Bible, because I would like to know what everybody's talking about and understand it and learn the lessons that are presented in it. So, yeah, I've never told anybody that before. So,
It's amazing. Okay, Elijah, what is the best piece of advice you've ever received?
don't try to do everything yourself. Focus on what you're best at and outsource the rest.
Love that. Focus on what you're best at. You've done a great job at it.
I'm trying. It's funny. So I need to explain. So my business model is it's like way less real estate. And now it's like sales and marketing and investor relations. And so I'm learning the whole like ins and outs of like lead generation, email marketing, like SEO. Like it's a completely different thing. And like I need to outsource that stuff because I'm not really good at it. I need to be focused on like getting on TikTok and creating content or like having dinner with investors. So even within my very like niched down thing, I need to like get way, way, way more focused on what I'm good at and then like outsource everything else.
Yeah. Qu question number three. Why are you doing all this? What's your why?
So it started out as me being a deal junkie, and it's still kind of true. Like I love getting deals done. I love the wins. It's awesome. But also, I love being able to travel, have location freedom, and the essentially the passive income that this life provides with real estate investing allows me to do that. But then I also have larger goals. I would like to do venture capital one day. Maybe I'll have $100 million to go invest in cool tech startups or whatever it is, and then eventually do some type of philanthropic efforts with the money that I made.
Nice. I love that. Just basically have fun. Like just be able to like have fun with your money. Like I think that's like people always money is such like a stressful thing for people.
Do fun stuff, make cool memories, go jet skiing, jump off a cliff, do whatever you want. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, man. Final question. Tell us about a day where that you went without wearing underwear.
It's a weird question.
We didn't say they'd be normal.
So yeah, here you go. So like we spend a few months every year in Hawaii. My girlfriend's from Hawaii, and I try to like just wear a bathing suit every day, like board shorts, and wear underwear when wearing board shorts, and it's awesome. It's you're so free, and you don't have to worry about it. I guess the other time would be when I was at a military training school, and we just like went like commando just with our pants on. So
It's like the most uncomfortable feeling, one of the most uncomfortable feeling. Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing. And then Elijah, where can people find out more about you if they want to maybe invest with you, if they want to do a deal with you, et cetera, et cetera?
yeah, the best way is to first, add me on LinkedIn, Elijah. It's linkedin.com/in/Elijah W. Brown. Hopefully we can put a link to that. Send me a connection request, and I post, a few times, 3 or 4 times per week. And then you can also check us out and learn about our strategy and sign up for our deal list on our website at goldhawk.us.
Yep, goldhawk.us, just like it sounds. Awesome. Elijah, thanks so much for coming on the show. I think your story is super inspirational for people, especially just starting out, to see where they may be 5 years in the future, 6 years in the future. And so, yeah, man, it's been super inspirational. Good to see you. Thanks for coming on, and we'll talk again soon.
Yeah, Craig and Allie, thank you so much for having me on. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Elijah.
And that was Elijah Brown. Allie, what'd you think of Elijah?
It was a great episode. I met him, like he mentioned, at a conference this past year, and he seems like a really good guy and with a really relatable story. So, because he starts it off saying he didn't even have money for his first single family, which is a position that a lot of people start out in. They want to get into real estate investing. They usually go into single family first, but oh, wait, don't have money. So he talks about how to overcome that and then how to continue scaling. Really, he's a really open guy too. So like he said, hit him up on LinkedIn if you have any questions.
Yeah, definitely hit him up on LinkedIn. It seems like that's his social network of choice. So yeah, really smart guy, really knows how to scale. I think it's a great guy to just talk to, and he seems like really down to earth. I think he'd have a conversation with anybody. So definitely reach out. And if you like this episode, if you thought this was inspiring, guys, please, please, please leave us a rating and review. It totally helps us out. It helps the show out. And we just love to see the feedback and all that stuff. So, guys, thank you all so much for listening, and we'll see you all next time.
That's it for this episode of Investify. We hope that these nuggets of real estate wisdom lead to more savvy financial planning and a clearer path towards financial freedom. For more content like this, subscribe to the show at investify.com. Don't forget to leave a rating and share it with your friends. Together, we can transform more real estate newbies into successful and clever investors. Thank you so much for listening. See you on the next one.